I will be speaking about adolescent brain development, motivation, and emotion. Adolescence is a period shaped by rapid advancements in physical and mental capabilities. It involves a social transition from child to adult, interposed with a multitude of pivotal changes in the brain and body. In almost every domain, adolescence is a time of strength and resilience. However, this is also the period in which mortality and morbidity is at its peak, mainly because teenagers are known to engage in more sensation-seeking, risk-taking, and reckless behavior. Part of this vulnerability is associated with biology in the emotion and motivation neurosystems, which can contribute to an increased tendency to take part in such experimental behaviors. There is evidence to suggest that this contribution is linked to two brain systems that influence decision-making. The first system is the incentive processing system. This involves the ventral striatum and the orbitofrontal cortex. So what this system does is it biases decision-making based on the value and prediction of potential rewards and punishments associated with an activity. It usually undergoes rapid modification during adolescence. The second system tends to go through a more gradual maturation and is known as the cognitive control system, which involves the lateral prefrontal cortex. This system upholds goal-directed decision-making. It does this by keeping our impulses in check and by initiating the appropriate signals that allow deliberation when it comes to making alternative choices. Neuroimaging studies have shown that there is an increased activation of the incentive processing system when it comes to risky choices, and a decreased engagement in the cognitive control system. But there is limited research that has examined the social as well as contextual factors that may further influence these biological systems, and that's where this current study comes in. So in this study, Chan et al. Incorporated the social context and examined the influence of peers on adolescent risk-taking. They hypothesized that the presence of peers will promote adolescent risk-taking by stimulating the brain regions linked with the anticipation of potential rewards. This was tested by measuring brain activity in adults, adolescents, and young adults. 40 participants were required to take part in a stimulated driving game and make decisions on whether to stop at given intersections or run through and risk a collision with another vehicle. The aim was to reach the end of the track in the quickest time to receive a monetary reward. The social context was manipulated by having each participant complete the game both alone and in the presence of his or her peers, whom they were asked to bring along. The peers were asked to interact with the participant through an intercom system. So results showed no significant interaction between age and social context factors at this sample size. It was observed that only adolescents took more significant risks when being watched by their peers compared to when they were alone. And this was evident by the significant increase in the number of go decisions and subsequent crashes. The pairwise comparisons amongst the three groups found an age effect, but only between adults and adolescents, so there was no significant difference between the young adult group and the other two. Adults showed greater activation in the cognitive control system, and young adults showed an intermediate level of activation. Adolescents showed greater activation in the VS and OFC regions, so in the incentive processing system, in the peer condition compared to the alone, but this effect was not found in the other two groups. So overall, was that the difference in reward system activation was primarily dependent on social context, which supported the hypothesis. But this effect was not due to overt peer pressure. It was simply due to the presence of peers influencing decision-making. So Chen et al. Suggested that the risk-taking effect could be due to the neural vulnerability that arises during the maturation of the brain systems that support decision-making. The fact that there was no difference in the adult group could be because either adults didn't find the reward enticing enough to take risks, or because adults were more actively able to engage with the cognitive control system when making decisions. It was proposed that the engagement with the cognitive system is not dependent on social context, but rather on age and experience. So some strengths of the study, it combined the neural and social components of development and looked at how both of them can influence decision-making. It incorporated the use of the stimulated driving game. So driving is a social role that is acquired during adolescence and causes significant increases in risk and death due to reckless behavior. So this study provided an insight as to what extent does peer presence influence adolescent decision making. And it also separated peer engagement with peer presence. So we found that it's not just the engagement of peers with the adolescent or the driver, but simply their presence that can influence decision making. But some limitations, the study had an incredibly small sample size, so there was no statistical interaction that was found. The only difference recorded was an observed difference in the number of grow decisions made by adolescents. Also, there are other plausible explanations for the activation in the VS region of the brain. Adolescents could show risk-taking behavior in the social context due to an uncertainty of what decision to make rather than the actual potential reward that they were going to receive. The risky decision could be made due to a lack of concentration because of other distractions that are present. And also, since it was not shown that simply the presence of peers influences risk-taking behavior, the increase in VS activation could also be associated with upholding a certain personal image in front of peers. Reckless behavior is sometimes seen more desirable and a likable trait in a peer group, and this could be shown more in males as well rather than females, as driving is seen as a more stimulating task for males, but it's hard to come to any conclusion based on gender because this study did not provide any insight into gender differences. So from this study, social context influences neuroactivity, and neuroactivity subsequently predicts decision making. Ideally, we want adolescents not to be influenced negatively by peers in any circumstance, but this is not practical. We can't stop adolescents from engaging in sensation-seeking or risk-taking behavior or being around peers because this is necessary and part of the development. But since the incentive processing system weighs rewards and punishments, we can promote safer decisions by educating teens on the negative consequences associated with various common social contexts. So clinicians can focus on establishing strategies to promote deliberation with their adolescent clients, and schools can introduce regular information sessions that go through the negative consequences of risky behaviors in various contexts, and this could include safe alcohol consumption as well as driving. The future research can be conducted in examining the activation process of the cognitive control system and what causes this inhibition during adolescence. Also, investigating the reward-specific processes separately, maybe looking at decision value versus prediction error, examining gender differences and how intervention as well, and examining the influence of other common social contexts other than driving on decision making.